Yes, Pavan. I started recording it.
Yeah. So you all have Windows machines, right?
Yes, Pavan.
Okay. So today I don't have any presentations, so it's just like an on-the-fly session. Like even I didn't actually prepare for this session. Okay, let's see like how this actually goes. Okay. So I just wanted to share a cheat code sheet. So basically, like when we play games, like we find these cheat codes, right? So the same way, like with the Docker and then most of these technologies, like I tend to find these cheat codes, and so this is the place where like we'll have all this all these commands like in single place. Okay, I'll just share it to you guys. So this comes like very handy for the entire session. Okay, so it has like multiple commands. So basically, like don't worry about all these commands, or don't actually try to remember like or remember all these commands at a single time. Like okay, so most of the time, like we can make use of Google or other technologies. Like okay, so but you need to understand what is the in and out of these Docker containers and what is actually happening behind the scenes. Okay. So let me start with the architecture again. So as a developer, like as a new developer, like I actually wanted to start a new project. Like we wanted to start with a web application, let's assume. Okay, what I'll do is like I'll take a Docker file. I'll create a Docker file. So this is my Docker file. So it's just like a text file. You should name it as a Docker file, and you need to have all those commands like which you wanted to have. Like for example, like for installing Nginx, like you need to follow a sequence of steps which are specific to Ubuntu, right? So you need to specify all those commands. Like okay, so this is my Docker file. So once this Docker file is present, like what I try to do is like I'll build an image from this Docker file.
Myself, I couldn't see any screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to share it. So now you're able to see, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the Docker file. So as a developer, like, so I just wanted to start with a project, web application kind of project. So I'll just have like sequence of steps like from Ubuntu, and then I'll specify like install Nginx, copy the source code from GitHub, and then run the source code on startup of this particular container. So and so all the commands like I'll be providing, and we'll see all these Docker files in depth in coming sessions. Okay. So once I have this Docker file, what I'll do is like I'll create a image from this Docker file. So this is called as building an image. So this is Docker image. Okay. So this doesn't have any shape or something like that. Okay. So this is just like this is the file, text file, but this is again an image. Like you cannot actually see the I mean, you cannot actually see, it's just like a binary file or an executable file kind of thing. Okay. So once we have all the steps that were written in this Docker file, they'll be translated when we build into this Docker image. Okay. Once this Docker image is actually created, what we need to do is like, so we need to run this particular image like. So I'll run this image with this Docker name. This is the run phase. So once I run this image, like I'll be getting a container. Okay. So this is the actual instance of this particular image. So it is just like, so if you remember like Java or C# or any OOPS concepts, like we'll have a class. A class is nothing but like .cs file or .java file where you'll have all the properties, methods and everything like. So when do we actually make use of this particular class? So when we create an object of that particular class, so that is when we'll be making use of that class, right? The same way, like whenever like we run this particular image, then only like we'll be actually making use of it. Or you can just take an example of this, something like this. So for example, so you can see this is just an executable, all right? So you can't actually do anything with this executable. So what you need to do, so you need to run this particular executable, and that is when like the TeamViewer get installed. So and we can use the TeamViewer in the similar way, like this can be related to an exe or something like that. And when we run this particular image using a command, like that is when a container is actually created. And this is container. So if you run it another time, okay, so the same Docker image, like if you want to run it like another time, so you can actually, when you issue the run command, so it will create another container. So the same way, like you can actually run it like multiple times, the same image. So you can create like multiple containers out of a single image. Okay, and the main advantage of this particular Docker is, so each of these containers, like they are isolated. So you can treat this as like one virtual machine. This is like another virtual machine, and this is like another virtual machine. So whenever like whenever like we run a process or something like that in this particular container, so it doesn't actually mess up with this process with another process running in this container. Okay, so they don't actually run in this, they don't actually share the memory or anything like that. So they run isolated. So I'll be creating a container by executing the run command on an image. And once I create a container, what I'll try to do is like, so I'll just, so if I want to deploy this on AWS, or if I want to share this particular image to one of my friends, so what I need to do, so I'll publish this particular container. So where should I publish this container? So there are like multiple options to publish this container. So it can be Docker Hub. These are called as like image repositories. So I can actually publish it to AWS Container Registry. Same way, like we can also do it to other services like AWS, Azure, or GCP. So here again, like we have multiple different types. So different types in the sense like, so we can actually have private repositories and then public repositories. Public repository. Okay, so I can publish my container, or image, like, so this is so though we are publishing the container, so it is called as like image publishing. Okay, so I can publish my image to Docker Hub, like private repositories or public repositories. Private repositories are nothing but like, so you'll have to create an account with any of these services like AWS Container Registry, Azure, GCP, or Docker Hub. And then you can publish your image to the private repository. Like whenever you do publish your repository to a private one, so it will not be accessible to the outside world. Okay, so if you want to use this particular image, like initially, like you need to log in from the CLI, and then you can fetch this particular content image. Okay, whereas that is not the case with public repositories. So with public repositories, like anyone can actually, if they know the image name, or if they're able to search, so then they can actually fetch it from the Docker Hub or any public repositories. Okay, so you can see these are all public repositories. So Nginx, Ubuntu, Alpine, and all these things. So I also have like few private repositories. Sorry, unfortunately, these are all public repositories which I created. So I can make it as a private repository. So we can actually have like one private repository. So since this is like a free account, like I can create only one private repository in the Docker Hub. Okay. So that's the difference between like private repositories and public repositories. So till now, what I'm actually doing. So as a developer, like I'm the first person starting on this particular project. Okay. So I wanted to develop a web application, like so container as a web application. So that is running on the Nginx. So what I'll do initially, I'll create a Docker file, and using this Docker file, like I'll provide all the steps that are required for my project. Like, so I need to take Ubuntu as the base image, and then I need to install Nginx and then copy the source code from GitHub and perform like any other activities, like start the Nginx or other activities. Okay. So once that is done, so I'm building this particular Docker file without actually building this Docker file. So it's nothing but like a notepad or text file kind of thing. Okay. So this doesn't have anything to do. Okay. So what you need to do. So after creating the Docker file, like we need to build this particular Docker file. So once we build this particular Docker file, like we'll be getting something called as Docker image file image. Okay, so once you get this Docker image, so it is just like an executable or something like that. Like I just gave a similarity, right? It's not exactly an executable kind of thing, but you can just relate to it. So once this image is actually created, what you need to do, so we need to execute the run command. Like, so you'll have an image name. So use on that image name, like you need to run. So this is again another command. Like once you run, so it will actually create a container. So if you run it again, like it will create another container. So if you want to run it like another time, like it creates another container. You can also kill these containers, like, or you can also stop these containers. So if you don't want, okay. So this is for my local development. But in order to share this container as an application to any of my colleagues, or if I want to deploy it on AWS or something like that. So if we want to do it on a local, so this part should be fine. Okay. This part should be fine for local development. But if we want to go further, and then if we want to share it with the team, or if we want to host it, like deploy it on AWS or GCP or Azure, so then we need to publish this particular image into another any of these private or public repositories. So this is one way. Another way is, so you can simply share this Docker file to your friend. Okay, so to your teammates. And what they can actually do is they can actually follow the same steps, like build image and then run the container on their local machines. But for deployment sake, like these are the steps that are supposed to be followed. Okay. So either you share the Docker file with your friend, or you just publish this particular image to any of these repositories. Okay. So once you publish this image to a repository, so your friend, like what he can actually do is like, so he can actually pull this particular repository. So this is called as pull action. So he can pull this particular repository, and then once he pulls this repository, like this particular image, so a local copy of this image is created on his machine. So again, like you'll get Docker image. So once you get this Docker image, so again, what you need to do, so you need to run. So we need to run this particular image, and it will create container. This will create a container. So this way, like we are able to publish the image, and then the other person, like so other interested parties, like they're able to pull this image and then create a container out of this image. Like, so is this clear? Like, or any questions?
Clear, Pavan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everyone, like it is clear, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't hesitate to ask me. Like I can repeat if you have any questions. So this is the overall architecture of this particular Docker. Okay, so how these images actually work, and then how they actually publish it to repositories, and how you can actually pull them and run them. So now let's see the cheat sheet, which I shared with you. Okay, so you're able to see the cheat sheet, right? I'll minimize this thing. Okay, so first, Docker contents, Docker build. So as I mentioned, like you just remember this, right? What's the first step? Like if we want to get started. So if we don't want to make use of any of these particular containers that are actually present in the internet, so how we will actually proceed? Like so Docker file. Okay, so you'll create a Docker file on your local machine. And then so you'll execute this particular command, build an image from the Docker file. Okay, so Docker build. So you simply need to specify the directory or if you are in the current directory. So for example, like if I'm in the current directory, if I'm in this particular directory, okay, and I have a Docker file somewhere here. So I'm in the current directory, Docker build dot. So if you are actually in the current directory, so you can simply use the dot. So how it is able to identify the Docker file? Okay, so as I mentioned, like so all the Docker files, they are supposed to be in this format. Like so it should be saved something like this. So it should be saved something like this. Docker. Okay, so it should not have any extension. So I'm not saving it as .txt. See, you can see the difference. Like so, this is a text file. So this is the file of type .txt, but this is not a .txt file. See, file type, it is just file. Okay. Description, it is just a Docker file. I mean, the file name which we give. So make sure that like whenever you're creating the Docker file, you always have the file name in this format, like, and you should not have any extensions like .txt or something like that. Okay, so now I'll just execute this command, Docker build. Docker. So I will actually go to the Docker file like at a later point of time. So now here, so even like I don't have any content on there. So first we build this particular image. So Docker image. And once we run this particular command, so Docker build, you need to specify either the directory name or dot. So whenever like you specify this dot, so it tries to execute all those steps, like so all the steps like that we created in the Docker file. Like we'll see the Docker file at a later point of time. So first we'll start with this, but I'm just giving you an overview like how this is actually related. Okay, so you'll execute this command and it will create an image. So once you have this particular image, so what did I mention? So you need to run this particular image to create a container. Okay, so you need to run Docker run. You will have an image name. Okay, so you need to run that particular image. Okay, so Docker run in the next. So once you run this particular image, so as I said, like, so you have to push this particular, publish this particular container, right? So image to any of these repositories. So you'll see like Docker push. This is the Docker push, upload an image to a repository. So you can also version this repository like image, something like this 1.0, 1.1 as kind of. Okay, once you push this particular image to the Docker content hub, like again, like on your other machine, like you need to just pull this particular image. So the pull command, this is the pull command, like Docker pull image and then the tag name. So if I want to pull Nginx, I just wanted to specify like Docker pull Nginx. Okay. And finally, like once you pull this particular image, so again, like the image will be on your local machine and you need to run this particular command like Docker run Nginx. Okay. So hope you're clear, right? Or any questions with this thing? So no questions, right?
No.
Okay. So this is the overall architecture of Docker. So basically, like we create all these images and then publish, and then we'll actually use this, pull these images and create. Like now, let's try to go somewhat deeper. So what I'll try to do is like I'll just pull a basic image. Like okay. So as I mentioned, so Docker and then virtual machine. So if we see that architecture, like let's see. Okay. So now, if you remember, like, so when we are actually doing this, seeing this architecture, the comparison between like uh, Docker and then virtual machines. So the difference between the Docker and virtual machines is like, so you'll have the host machine, and on top of this host machine, like you'll have so you'll have Hyper-V or VMware, and then
Yeah.
on top of it, you'll have all these individual virtual machines where the OS, like this is the OS block, and this is the virtual machine. Like you'll have all those OSs and then applications running inside this particular operating system. Okay, so this is with the virtual machines. But whereas with the Docker, like you'll have the host machine, and on top of host machine, like you'll have a Docker somewhere here. Like I mean, so on top of like host machine, like you'll have Docker. And then so you'll have only the required binaries from the operating system. So instead of having the complete operating system, so we'll have like individual binaries, only required binaries. Okay. So all the required binaries, and then we'll have all these applications running on top of them. Together, they form a container. Okay, so this is one container. So this is container one, container two, and then container three. So the only overhead like we are actually not seeing is, so instead of installing the complete OS, so we are actually copying only the required binaries. Okay. So for example, like if you see Ubuntu, so this is my Ubuntu image, like. So you all have like Docker, right? Docker installed.
Yes, Pavan.
Yes.
Okay. So how did you test this Docker, if Docker is successfully installed on your machine or not? Like, so you can just check like the Docker version, Docker -v. Okay, so this will actually give you the version of the Docker. So once you have this Docker installed, so you can check like all the images that are actually present on your machine, Docker images. Okay, so I have only one image. So this is specific to ASP.NET image. Okay. So from the cheat sheet, if you want to list all those images, so show a list of all images that are present on your host machine. So Docker images. Okay, so you can execute this command like. So if you want to see all the containers that are actually running on your machine, so you need to execute this particular command like Docker ps. So I don't have like any containers running on my machine. Like I have only one container, one image that is actually running. I'll remove that image also. If I want to remove an image, delete an image like Docker RMI image name. So this is my image name, right? So this is my image name. So I'll just copy this. Or I can take this image ID. So it just deleted that particular image. So now I'll execute the same command like Docker images. I don't have any images like. So you can try it on your machine and then let me know what's the result you're seeing. So anyone wants to try this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Pavan.
Yeah. So let me know like once you're done.
Only I don't have any Docker images, Pavan. So it
Okay,
is
so
only
you're so it is empty, right?
yes.
Okay. So from the cheat sheet, like if you want to see list of images which are present on your machine, so you need to simply run Docker images. Okay. So if you want to delete an image, so you need to specify like Docker RMI remove image, and then so image name. Okay. So image name, or you can just specify like image ID.
ID.
Okay. So if you want to list all the containers that are running on your machine, so you need to simply execute this particular command like Docker PS. Since you guys don't have like any image created, so obviously like there won't be any containers running on your machines. Okay. So now let's do one thing. So I'll just pull the Ubuntu image. Okay. So you know, right? So Ubuntu is nothing but like an operating system, like Linux operating system, just like Windows. So Ubuntu is another operating system. Okay. So I just wanted to pull this particular image. So I can just go into the Docker Hub and I can ideally like I can find this particular version number. So if you want to download a specific version, like we'll have like Windows 10, Windows 8, Windows 6, right? Something like that. So we'll also have like different versions of this Ubuntu operating system. So 22.04, 18.04 or something like that. Okay. So if you just specify Docker pull Ubuntu. So this is for pulling an image from this remote, from the Docker hub. So Docker pull Ubuntu. So I'm just specifying like get this particular Ubuntu image. So obviously like since Docker and then Docker hub are actually closely tied, so it will actually try to get this particular image directly from the Docker hub. So if you want to fetch this particular image from other repositories, so you need to log in into those repositories and then you need to fetch them. So now you can see like using default tag, like so it is trying to get the latest tags. So a tag is nothing but like so if I just wanted to download different versions, like so if I wanted to download like 18.04 or 20.04 or something like that, I need to specify the tag. So since I didn't actually specify any tag name, so it is just downloading the latest one. So it is pulling from this particular repository and then pull is completed. Okay. Now let's execute this command. Like you can try it in parallel. So Docker images. So now you can see like I have one image like Ubuntu image, which is of size like 72.8 MB. So anyone trying?
Yes, sir. I'm trying.
So since this is the latest version, so I assume like the latest version is 22.04. So I just wanted to, let's say like I'm running on two different applications. So I'm working on two different projects and one particular project is using the latest version of Ubuntu, whereas like another project, it is using like another version of Ubuntu. So now if I want to download, so if I want to work on these two items, like ideally in real world, like in the past, like what we used to do, so we used to create like two different virtual machines, one with 22.04 OS and the other with like 18.04 OS. But simply now what you can actually do, so you can download this particular version, so 18.04. So Ubuntu 18.0. So it is trying to fetch 18.04. I'll just issue the Docker images. So you can see like I have both Ubuntu latest version as well as like 18.04 on my machine. So if I want to use this for one project, I can use this. For other project, I can use this. Okay, so they're isolated. If we want to do the same thing with a virtual machine, so obviously like you need to install both of these OSs on the virtual machine, and then so you need to create two different virtual machines. But so here like we can avoid that. So any questions?
I have small.
Mhm.
Pavan? Okay.
Yeah, tell me.
While I'm
Can you hear me?
downloading 18.
Just a second, Sandhya. Like, yeah. So yeah, I think like who is asking the first question? Like,
Ramesh Garu, go on.
Yeah, it's me, Sai Krishna.
okay, yeah, Sai Krishna. Yeah, let me know.
Yeah, my doubt is so when we are running it, when we are trying to use Docker image for database purpose, like I'm developing a Spring Boot application. So
Okay.
instead of instead of installing database of any MySQL or anything, maybe I
Hmm.
can use Docker image for that, right?
Exactly.
So in that case, is Docker image will save any data? Like we
Yeah.
are creating
So
as a
so it will save the data. But I'll let you know, like, so basically, like, so there is a concept of sharing the network sharing and I mean, sharing the paths. Okay. You need to share the hard disk. Okay. Or else like the data, it gets stored on the Docker container. And then whenever like uh, whenever like we get out of Docker or whenever we restart this particular host machine, so these containers, they get killed. Okay. So when the container is killed, you'll lose all the data. So we'll see that like in the next steps, but you'll be able to have all these databases. So for example, like MySQL. So this is the official image for MySQL. The same way like MariaDB, Percona, whatnot. You'll have almost like all the databases, Postgres. So you'll have like Postgres. You have like Redis container. So usually like Redis is not supported on Windows machine. So you'll not find a direct installation of Redis on your Windows machine. But if you want to run Redis on your Windows machine, so I follow this approach, like use a Docker. So SQL Server, you'll also have SQL Server. This is like Microsoft SQL Server. So you can see like Couchbase, which is a NoSQL database. You'll have like almost like all this softwares, like images. You'll find this is Microsoft SQL Server, like official image. So yeah, so we'll see that, Sai Krishna. So basically, like in our upcoming sessions, like so we'll see like how to run a particular database and then how to persist the data. Like, yes, Sandhya, you
okay.
can go ahead with your question.
Pavan, I'm able to download 20.04, but I'm unable to download 18.04 image. It is not showing.
So did you issue the same command like Docker pull
Huh.
Ubuntu colon?
Yes, the error is this. The error is this commit does not belong to any branch on this repository.
Interesting. So I'm able to download it. So we'll check that once.
Okay.
Twenty point zero four, right? I'll try 20.0. So I have like different versions of Ubuntu, like 20.04 I'm able to download. So we'll see it on your machines on the like, okay. But it should ideally work.
Okay, Pavan.
Okay, so this is how like we download these images. Like, so in this case, like we are actually bypassing this step. Like, where is my other image? So in this case, like we are not creating a Docker file as of now. Like, so we are actually performing this operation. Like, okay, so we are getting this Docker image, pulling this Docker image from the Docker Hub public repository, and then we didn't actually create a container, but we'll see that shortly. So this is what we are actually doing, pulling the image from Docker Hub. So once I have this image, like what I need to do. So as I mentioned, like, so having this image, it doesn't make any sense for you. Like, so it's just like an executable that is an exe which you downloaded onto your laptop or something like that. So you can't do anything with this particular image directly. Like, so what you need to do, so you need to run this particular image. Like, so in order to run this particular image, so you need to run this particular image. So in order to run, what's the command that we are supposed to use? So you need to use docker run image name. Okay. So you either like you can use this ID. So basically like, so if I want to run this 20.0404, okay. So docker run, what's the image name? So this is the ID like which I can use. Okay. So what happened? Like, so did it run this particular thing? Let's see. Like, so do I have a container created? No, I don't have a container created, right? You're not seeing any container which is running, like using docker ps. So docker ps is the command used to list all the running containers. So let me execute another command like docker ps -a. So here, like you can see, so this is the image ID. So the same image ID. So what did it do? So it executed this bash command and then it ran for 35 seconds. And after 30 seconds, like it exited. Okay. So I'm able to create the same container from this particular image. And after creating this particular image, like since I'm not doing any operations or running it in the background, so it stopped execution. Okay. So let me execute another command, docker ps, docker run. This image. So I need to run this particular. So my PowerShell has an issue. What is- Just give me a second. Okay, so I just gave this command. One second. Yeah, so this is the one, like, so Docker run. So if you want to interact this particular thing, so now you can see like I ran this particular container, right? So Docker image. So and now I'm inside this particular Docker image. So if you want to see the running containers now, like I'll go to another tab, another PowerShell window or something like that, and I'll execute like Docker PS. So you can see like, so my Docker image, so it is actually running, like I have one container running. Okay. So this is how like we actually run this particular container. So if I do exit, so if I'm exiting from this container, so obviously this container gets killed. So I don't have like any container. Okay. So IT is nothing but like interactive mode. Like, so if you want to interact with the container, so you need to issue this particular variable, like, so minus IT. Okay. So, and this is my image name. So what am I doing right now? So I just pulled an image like Ubuntu image from the Docker Hub. And after that, like I'm running this particular container. So since this Ubuntu container, it doesn't have like any running process in the background. So it gets like after getting started, like it is getting killed immediately, like the container. Okay. So in order to interact this particular Ubuntu container, what am I issuing? So I'm just running Docker run minus IT and then the image name. And I'm just specifying like the image name here. Like, so when I say minus IT, so it is actually getting me into that particular image. So it is something like, so you have this particular virtual machine, right? Previously. So whenever like you want to get into the virtual machine, like you'll use either like putty or so MSTSC, right? So to get into this virtual machine and there you'll be working. So now the same way, like if we want to get into this container, so we need to issue this particular command like docker run minus IT and so the image name. So you can see like you can issue various like Ubuntu commands or something like that, like based on our requirement. So now if you see, I'll create a file folder or something like that. OK, mkdir. I'm inside this container right now. OK. One area. So I'm doing ls. So you can see this Pavan area, right? OK. So I'll exit from this container. OK. And again, like I'll run this image. OK, with the same command like docker run minus IT and then image name. Now let's execute the same command ls to list all the folders that are actually present. So now you cannot actually see the folder which we created in the past.
Yes, Pavan Arya.
OK, so you're not able to see that particular thing. So that is because, so every time like when you're running this particular docker run minus IT so and so this command, OK, so it is actually creating a new container. So whenever like we issue a run command on the image, so it is creating a new container. So the same way, like when I'm running another instance, like another time, like when I'm running this particular thing, like docker run -it and then the image name. So it is again like creating another container. So these are like isolated. So the data like which you create in this particular container, like it will not be present in this container. Like it is not even accessible, like unless you share it, unless you share it. Okay. So this is how like we can see like how they are isolated. Okay. So I'll just show another option. Like I'll again create like another directory. Okay. So how many instances do we have? So I'll do docker ps. So there is one container that is actually running. So now I'll execute this command again, like docker run -it. Okay. So what is this command doing? So it is running in the interactive mode from this particular image. Like, okay, so it is trying to create an image container from this particular image. Okay, so you have this, right? Another image got created. Now let's do ls. So here, like you'll see this directory like Pavan Arya. This is my here, like you are able to see this Pavan Arya, right? So whereas like here, like you'll not be able to see that. So this is one container and this is another container. So let's execute docker ps and see how many containers are present. So you can see like I have two different containers. Okay. So anyone like they want to try it on your machine? So any questions like so with this? Hmm. So any questions?
Present we don't have any questions on now. When we are trying to do all these things,
Yeah.
we'll get, I think.
Okay. So if you want to try, like you can actually try. Like I'll just give like 2 or 3 minutes.
Sure.
So it's 420, right? So let's try to practice it on your machine in just 2 minutes. So this is the command like. So in order to execute a command container like docker run, and you need to specify the image name. Since in Ubuntu, like you don't have any background process, the container is starting and immediately, since it doesn't have like any job, it is getting killed. But if you want to interact with this container, like, so if you want to get into this Ubuntu machine and then if you want to do some operations, so then you need to run it in interactive mode. So in order to run it in interactive mode, like you need to specify docker run -it, and then this is the image name. So anyone trying? So this is the first thing like which I mentioned. Like, so this should be an interactive session, like not a single man show. So anyone like trying?
Yes, Pavan.
Yes,
I had
Pavan,
tried.
we are
Yes,
trying.
Pavan.
Okay. So let me know like once you're done. So Sai Krishna, so you asked a question, right? So basically like what happens like if we use MySQL or any of these databases, right?
Yes, yes, Pavan.
So when you download this image and when you start this particular container, okay, so MySQL container, let's assume, okay. So the data, it will get stored in the container itself, like, okay. But whenever like you restart your host machine or whenever like you stop the container, obviously like you'll lose all the data, okay. For that, like you need to do network sharing, okay. We'll see that.
Okay, okay.
So let me know once you're done with this. So anyone facing issues?
No.
No, Pavan. I have
No.
created a new directory.
Okay, so you created a directory on the container, right? So when you practice, like what you can actually do is like, so you can create these containers and then see like if the directory still exists after the container getting killed or something like that. Okay, so we learned these commands, like what are the commands like which we learned? So we learned this command like Docker images, and then we also learned this Docker pull the image from, you need to specify the image name. Okay. And what else? Like, so we also learned this like Docker run the image name, and also we tried this like running it in interactive mode.
Yes, Pavan.
Okay. So now we'll see this particular thing. Like, so if you want to assign a name to a container, like, okay. So till date, like what is happening? Docker PS. So when you execute, okay. So you can see all the my container images. You can see this is the random image that is actually created, right? So in order to use the container image name, so I'm just using this container ID. So if you want to assign an image name to this particular container, okay. So in that case, like what you can actually do is, so Docker run. So I don't want to run it in interactive mode. So I'm okay, like even if it is getting killed immediately. So Docker run, and this is the image, this is a syntax like, so Docker run hyphen name, whatever the name you want to provide, like container name and then the image. So I want to name it as like Pavan underscore Ubuntu. Okay, and this is the image ID which I'm giving. So since I'm not running this particular Ubuntu container in the interactive mode, so what happens, like it gets started and immediately it gets killed. So even you'll not notice like what is happening behind the scenes. So for seeing like all the containers, like even exited ones, so you need to execute Docker ps -a. So you can see that like, so Pavan Ubuntu. I can just name it like this. So we'll add another command like, so how to assign a name to this particular container. Okay, so ports, like I'll come back to this again. Like, so let's see this command, like, so start a container in the background. So in this case, what is happening? So the container, it is getting started and then immediately it is getting killed because so it doesn't have like any work to do. So it is getting killed immediately. But now let's execute another command like docker run. My container name is Ubuntu. And then so I'll just wanted to run it in the detached mode. Okay. So when I run it in the detached mode, so this Ubuntu container, it is actually detached mode is nothing but like, so you don't want to run it in the interactive mode. Okay. So it should run in the background. Okay. So I'll be running it in the detached mode -d and then the image name. Okay. So whatever like the command like I want to execute. So I want to start like bin/bash. So you might be having a question, Sandhya, like, so what is this bin and bash? Okay. So in Windows, like we have this command prompt. So you'll have this CMD command prompt, right? The same way, like in Linux, like you'll have this bash and then shell. Okay. So I'm running this particular image, this particular Ubuntu image. Yeah. Any question?
Bin and bash are also command prompts.
So these are the command prompts like where you can execute like bash scripts, like any bash commands. So you need to any Linux commands, like you can just specify this, like just like it is command prompt for Linux.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So the same way like we have this command prompt in our Windows machines, right? The same way this bash. So I'm just specifying this bin and bash because like this bash executable is present inside the bin. I'm specifying the path.
Okay.
So what I'm doing, I'm running like Docker run. I'm just specifying my container name and then I'm running it in the detached mode in the background. And this is my image name. And what is the command like I want to execute? I want to start this bash shell. OK. So you can see this error, like error response from the daemon config. The container name Pavan Ubuntu is already in use by the container. OK. So already like this particular container, it is already present. OK. Docker ps -a. So if you see, this is already present. This was exited like almost 3 minutes back. Okay. So now what I should do? So I should actually rename it. Like I wanted to create another. I want to change the name. So now you can see this container like it is running in the background. Docker ps. When you do like Docker ps to list all the running containers. Okay. One second. So I want to interact with this thing like so with in the detached mode. So now you can actually see this is so this is a worst case scenario. So usually like people they don't actually have this Ubuntu image, right? So just for getting started, like I'm just using this. So basically like Ubuntu machine, it doesn't have any purpose. Like I mean, so on top of Ubuntu, like you should install this Nginx or any of this required softwares, and then you need to run them in the background. Like so, or else like the Ubuntu machine, it gets started and then it gets killed. So here, like I'm issuing like interactive mode and in the background. So this doesn't actually make any sense. Like, so if I want to interact with this Ubuntu machine, like if I want to get into this Ubuntu machine, so obviously like I cannot actually do this, right? So -d option. But still, but you can see like I am doing this. So I'll just show you the difference, minus IT. So what's the difference between like detached mode and then without detaching? Okay. So this is actually, this container is already running, right? So D13B Pavan Ubuntu 2. So now I'm just running another container Pavan 1 in the interactive mode without the detached mode. Okay, so this is in the interactive mode. Like now I'm able to get into this Ubuntu machine, Ubuntu container. Okay. So now if you run this Docker PS, you'll see two running containers, Pavan 1 and Pavan Ubuntu 2. Okay. So one is running in the background mode. This one like Pavan Ubuntu 2. So this is running in the background mode. So when we executed this command, so we specified like -D. But for this, like we didn't actually specify detached mode. So both of them are running. So now if I just exit from this particular, so I'm inside this Ubuntu machine, right? So now if I exit from this machine, let's see what happens. So it got killed. Power none. Okay, so that is the difference between like detached mode and then interactive mode. So this is to start a container in the background, like. Okay, so any questions?
No, no.
No. So I think like we can wrap the session for today. So tomorrow, like we'll see further commands, like so how we can actually publish this particular image to another container, I mean to the registry and all these commands. Okay.
Okay.
So gradually, like we'll increase the pace.
Okay.
So I'll just give like another 3-4 minutes. Like if you have any questions, then just let me know.
Bhavan, how can we get into that detached container?
Okay, so if you want to get into this detached question, I mean, who asked this question?
Jerry.
Jalil. Okay, yeah. So you want to get into the detached container, so you need to do docker attach. So there should be the command docker inspect. Docker attach is the command that is should be used. Let me try that. So it's docker attach. See, so you can just specify this. This is the detached container, right?
Okay.
So you can just specify this.
Okay.
So if you want to get into this detached container. So when you exited, like it got killed. So docker attach is the command like that is used to get into a running container. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Like we have another 1 or 2 minutes. Like. So Jalil, like, do you have any further questions on this?
No problem.
But I have a question. So when you are actually attaching this container and then it is exiting, right? So but I don't want to exit. So I want to get out of this container, but I don't want to stop this container.
Okay.
So how will you actually do that? Like, so obviously that's a question which I had. I'll just show like docker run -IT. minus IT minus T, and then so this is in the detached mode, right? Oh, so this is my container ID, right? So Docker attach. So I'm inside this container now. So now I think like I can exit from this Docker. Yes. So it got killed. Like so with Control D, it got killed. So it should be Control. Another option, like how we can actually get out of it. See, so I just press like Control P and then Control Q. Okay. So this way, like I'm able to exit this particular container, but still it is running in the background. Did you get it?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm attaching this container, so I'm inside this container. So I want to get out of this container without exiting. Like so, if I do exit, like it is actually killing the container, right? So I don't want to kill the container. So that is when like Control P, and then Control Q. You can just check this Docker PS. So it is still running. Okay. So no other questions?
We need to practice more.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys then. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
So hope you like today's session. So you need to practice, as someone mentioned, like so without practice, like we cannot actually move further. So I hope like when you come for tomorrow's session, like so you practice it, at least like some of these commands like which we saw.
Sure. No.
Sure.
No.
Sure, Pavan.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
guys then. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Bye, Pavan.